Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. You're listening to Actors With Issues, a self-help podcast for actors, by actors. Hello, ladies, gents, and non-binary friends, and welcome back to another episode of Actors With Issues, the self-help podcast for actors, by actors, where we dive deep into the world of entertainment with special guests from TV, film, and Broadway and discuss what it means to be an actor today. I am your host, Juan Ayala, and today I am joined by an actor you know and love from House of Lies, Superstore, and Mortal Kombat, and in his latest role in the hit new NBC comedy St. Denis Medical. Please welcome Mr. Josh Lawson. Josh, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. What a lovely intro.
So firstly, congrats on the show so far and for the season 2 renewal. It's pretty rare these days that shows get a season 2. So, sadly, there's lots of sort of one and dones on both network and streaming. It's not really exclusive to either platform, but it's one of the few shows that I'm tuning into every week. It's pretty much you guys and Ghosts and Matlock. It's kind of just my holy trinity of broadcast TV, and it's been so cool. And fans have been absolutely loving it, and critics as well. I know the Critics' Choice Awards just happened. You guys had a few nominations there as well. But yeah, what's it been like for you now that the show is sort of finally out there? I know you guys did the pilot quite some time ago.
Yeah, we did. We did the pilot a couple of years ago now, and then we had a long break when the strikes happened, and we got into shooting season 1 after that. Top of last year, 24, and now it's what are we kind of halfway through the season on air now? What's it been like? Well. Yeah, I mean, what was it like to get the job? As you say, in a world at a time when work is becoming, increasingly more difficult to get. Not to add to that the complications that COVID, and then soon after COVID, the strikes, and now even the fires here in LA. Is going to have a sort of perhaps an unquantifiable effect on the industry. Yeah, given all that stuff, relief, gratitude, luck, I felt I felt really lucky that I was able to land not just a job in that time, but a job that I loved. And then what's it like now that it's on air? Well, I actually don't know really, because I deliberately don't look anything up. I don't read reviews or anything like that. I stay completely oblivious to all that stuff. I'm not on social media, so I don't see anything there. I admittedly, I don't watch anything that I'm in, so I don't even watch the show. I loved shooting it. I assume it's great. It felt good in the moment, but I don't watch it because I just feel like I'd focus on the wrong things. I think I'd be like, oh, why am I doing that with my mouth? And whatever. Or, oh, my hands look weird. But so I tend to stay away from all that just so that I can focus on the work, on the character, as opposed to being influenced by, human vanity. So yeah, I don't really know what the response has been like, and I don't even, to be honest, I don't even care to know, because I think I would fixate on it.
Yeah, that's a very healthy way of looking at it, though. It's just lots of actors try not to read reviews and whatnot, but you're very smart. Staying off social media it's crazy.
Learned the hard way, because that wasn't just me being zen from the get-go. It was from looking at it and reading reviews and looking at things online in the past, and just realizing I'm not strong enough. I just am not. My constitution is not enough to handle all that. So I just realized either I was going to have a mental breakdown and stay on social media, or I was going to get off it and just admit that ignorance was bliss. And I'm glad that I did.
Yeah. I want to go a bit back to your earlier days, sort of your early career days. We haven't had too many folks on the show who, grew up abroad and have sort of transitioned their career to working in the States. So, and there are a lot of young actors out there who are very eager to, work in Hollywood and in bigger productions, who are from abroad. So I'm curious, what was that transition like for you, starting out in your local industry and then branching out and now working, on a U.S. major network?
So I was a child actor. So I had an agent since I was about 8 years old.
Mm.
and was working in, local television in Brisbane, Queensland, where I'm from, and television and film when I could get it, from really, really a young age. And I knew early on that it was pretty much what I wanted to do. I was pretty singularly focused on that one thing. And as such, I used to watch, American sitcoms all the time. That was my bread and butter, like Golden Girls and Family Ties, Cheers, and Married with Children, or, that was my era. So
Mm.
I would watch that stuff and really think to myself, that's what I want to do. I just love that world. How do I make that happen? And so knew that the best thing to do then was to get a good agent in Australia. And the best way to get a good agent in Australia was to go to drama school and to use drama school to showcase my ability and to parlay that into getting representation. So went to the National Institute of Dramatic Art, which is what was at the time in '99 was sort of the premier acting school in Australia. There are others now that I think give it a run for its money, but did that for 3 years. Got a good agent after that, and basically said to my agent there, "Hey, listen, my goal is to get to the States. I want to get to LA. So let's focus on what we have to do to get that." And we did some, we worked a lot, but didn't quite get the right work until a TV show called Thank God You're Here, which was an improv-based comedy show
Mm.
in Australia. And that was really the first show, the first project that I did in Australia that people really watched en masse. So it had a huge audience. And the second I got that, I knew that I had enough then to go to the States and set up meetings. And that was in 2008, and I landed the day of the last writer's strike. So
Oh, did
the
you?
day that I landed I was told at the airport the writers have just struck, Hollywood shut down, and so that was my beginnings of my Hollywood journey. And I stayed in LA for about 15 years after that. So once I got to LA, landed that agent, manager, and then got the agent from that, and then it was just then I was on an equal playing field with everyone else. I was just auditioning, and getting work and then not getting work, like everyone else. But I came in my early 20s, I guess, with a lot of experience because I'd worked as a kid. So being on set was something I knew very, very well. I was very confident on set. I'd grown up on it. It didn't intimidate me being on set. That's all, because it was just my life. I'd known it, and maybe that gave me some sort of advantage. But yeah, I think I had some good years to begin with, and then a lot of not so good years later on.
Yeah, for many, that sort of career trajectory isn't quite that rising line that we'd love for it to be.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I always expect, once I started to work, it would only go in one
Yeah,
direction,
like a
right?
snowball.
Yeah, I was thinking work would beget more work, and then so on and so forth. So you're right. I was ill prepared for the drop. And the drop is not personal. It's just the way the industry works. It's erratic. It's unpredictable. And when that drop happened, it was a surprise, and you realize you kind of have to start the momentum all over again, and that takes even more time. And so, it's not exactly you drop and then you start back up again. No, for me, it was a drop, and then I had to start the momentum all over again. It's a cruel, shocking industry that I would not recommend anyone to get into, but it it certainly, yeah, it taught me that nothing was owed to me. I didn't deserve anything, and that there were a lot of extremely talented people who were also struggling, and I was no different.
And during those drops, were there moments where you considered another career path, or did you just know, like, I just have to keep pushing, keep going?
Yeah, I think there was a part of me that thought, okay, I've been doing this so long, I kind of have to keep going. Like I'm in too deep now. But then there was the realist in me going, okay, but what happens at 50 when you don't have any money? Like at some point it's about survival. Like you have to survive. You have to have a roof over your head and put food on the table. And, you know, those sort of tough realizations you just have to think about. So I guess in that way I thought, well, as opposed to kind of starting an entirely new career, I thought I could teach, right? I'd certainly learned enough. I've got a Bachelor of Arts from my university, so I could probably get a Bachelor of Education. I could start to teach this. At least I wouldn't have to leave the industry entirely. Still I could still talk about this thing that I loved to people who hopefully loved it too. And so yeah, I definitely started considering that. And I do teach from time to time. Occasionally, I get invited to talk to students about the industry and stuff. And I really love that. I love
Mhm.
talking to people who love it as much as I do. So that was and still is always there as an option, as something that I think is yeah, is a completely viable career that I would get into if things got grim again.
I'm curious, over the years, as we sort of listed a few of your credits, you've done a really great mix of film and television, things back in Australia, things here in the States. Is there a particular role that, well, I'm a firm believer that, there's something to be learned with every role on every set. But is there
Yeah.
one that you really walked away with sort of a new perspective on how things run or about yourself, about acting itself, about filmmaking? Anything come to mind?
Look, yeah, there is one. I won't say what it is out of respect for the project, but
Yeah.
it was a project that in Australia was offered me, and I just felt like I just don't feel like I'm right for this. Like I read it and I go, I'm flattered. It was a good role, but I don't feel like I was right for this, so I turned it down. And then they came back and they said, "No, really, we really reconsider. We think you'd be really good for this." But everything in my gut told me I just don't think I'm the guy. If
Mm.
I was directing this, I don't think I'd cast me. And they eventually kind of kept coming back and they kept increasing the temptation. And I said yes to it. And ultimately, I was right. I was not the guy for it. And when it came out, it was clear that I wasn't. And I tried my absolute best, but everyone can be miscast in something. And sometimes everyone, even the greatest actors in the world,
Yeah.
can do the wrong role. And no actor can do everything. That's just not possible. So I think I walked away from that thinking, trust your instincts. You know, definitely trust your gut when it's telling you something, and that there's no shame in knowing that you're not right for a role. It's not that. I also don't think the lesson there is to play it safe and to only do things you're good at, but because I don't think that's true either. I think it's really important to stretch yourself, but I think this was stretching beyond what I was capable of.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and ultimately, I think did me harm. Within the industry, I think it was, yeah, it. I think it exposed my limitations in a sense,
Mm.
and yeah, I had to work much harder after that to get work.
It's interesting hearing that because so many young actors, at least from a lot that I've read, comment online on Reddit and some like Facebook groups and whatnot that I'm part of. Young actors when they sort of come in and if an agent or manager asks them like, oh, well, what kind of roles do you want to play? And they're like, oh, I can do anything. I'm a theater person. I can do whatever. It's like, well, sure, in theater, in college, you can,
It's
but
it.
on camera, completely different situation where you have actors who are 60. We're not going to put a wig and some lines on your forehead and make you 60. It's such a learning curve, and
It completely is. And I'm often reminded of that quote by Miles Davis, who says, it takes a long time to learn to play like yourself. And I think that's exactly the point. It took me a long time to realize what I was and what I can bring to the table. I mean, there are scripts that I read and I go, oh, I am 100% the guy for this.
yeah.
Like, they should be so lucky. I am such a fit for this. And then there are roles that come in going, hey, I think I could do it, but there's almost certainly an actor out there who wouldn't have to try nearly as hard to be a better fit for this role.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what do you want as a director? Do you want the stretch? Do you want the actor to be like doing something so different, or do you want someone who acts even less and is more realistic and truthful? It's a mix because yeah, you're right. The theater person in me goes, I want to do it. Give me prosthetics and let me do an accent and a voice and how much fun that is. But you don't ever want to see the acting. You don't ever want the audience to notice that you're acting.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I think, and the industry has become a lot more like that, where they sort of want the actor to have as close to a lived experience to the character as possible, and that has certainly become more and more in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of fast forwarding to well, not quite today, as we discussed, the pilot was filmed um,
Yeah,
just under 2 years ago at this point, which is
yeah,
crazy how much
yeah.
time has passed for
I
St.
know
Dennis.
it's nice.
But we're about halfway through season one now, and without getting too much into spoilers, I'm curious: are there any moments coming up that you're excited for fans to see? Any sort of Bruce heavy episodes or anything like that?
Yeah, there's an episode coming up where Bruce shows off his dance skills more so than he does in the in his Beastie Boys pre-op routine. Yeah, and what I mean that's fun for perhaps obvious reasons to see someone who is clearly not a dancer dance. But what's great as an actor to do that stuff is when they throw that on the table and they were like, "We'll give you dance lessons and stuff," and I was like, "Great!" Like I love that. And part of what I love about this job is that every time I do a job, I learn a little about somebody else's job. It's such an unusual profession in that way, where this time I'm actually learning a fair bit about medicine. Not enough to practice in real life, but enough to probably more than the layman would ever know about medicine, right? And when I did Hustle Eyes, I learned a lot about management consulting. That's a profession I probably wouldn't have ever known much about had it not been for Hustle Eyes, and so on and so forth. I learned about the Navy when I did a show setting that, and it's really interesting in that way. But to get back to the dancing thing, yeah, I did a bunch of dancing with this great choreographer and dance expert here in Los Angeles, and yeah, there's little challenges within a show where it's like, oh, it's not just the acting in the scene. In this episode, I have to learn a dance routine. I kind of like that. Anyway, that is coming up, and for better or worse, you get to see Bruce's dance skills.
And much like Superstore, which was Josh Spitzer's other show, which you were also a part of, as we mentioned, and the many NBC mockumentary shows that came out before Parks and Rec, The Office. Saint Dennis does such a great job of like balancing the humor and the heart of the show. Yes, characters are a bit wacky. Some are just like over it, like many people are in their everyday jobs.
Yeah,
But as an audience member, you very much still care about what's going on in their lives, whether it's like relationships or marital, things going on. In the a recent episode where we sort of saw like the first casualty on the show, the first sort of
right.
death in the show, and characters are sort of like visibly upset. They're holding hands, and it's like, oh my God, like what? This is such a moving moment, and it does such a great job of balancing that. So I'm curious, can you talk a bit about navigating that balance in the writing as an actor?
Yeah, I think comedies now that don't explore that balance, I think they seem a little old-fashioned. I mean, it feels like audiences now really need a bit more of a spectrum of genre, even within a comedy. You
Mhm.
know, so yeah, I think they do an amazing job of exploring. I think drama, the writers, without ever getting sentimental. I don't ever think they want us to go so far that we're trying to elicit emotion, but rather, yeah, this is a truthful representation of a hospital where admittedly, a lot of dramatic things happen. I mean, you very rarely go to a hospital on your best day. You're often there on your worst day
Right.
for lots of reasons. And so a hospital setting is perfect, I think, for that balance because, the misadventures of the staff and the administration, yeah, there's going to be inherent comedy to that in any kind of workplace comedy. But then the revolving door of patients that come in provide the opportunity to explore um, a lot of different other emotions. Yeah. So in terms of how I navigated it, yeah, it was just making sure that we stepped into that world of drama, for want of a better word. I hate that, the difference between comedy and drama. It should all be somewhat real, right? It should all be life with the boring bits cut out. Um, but yeah, just making sure that I never lose what Bruce is, which is in some ways a character, and maybe it could be argued, or, even wackier a character than most in the ensemble, potentially, because he kind of gets into perhaps more outrageous situations by his own design,
Right.
because of his ego. And but yeah, making sure that there is a humanity there, making sure there is an actual human being at the heart of it, and that's really thanks to the writers who allow that to happen. But then never ever letting the actor in me go, oh, I'm going to give them drama. Like if they want to see how good an actor I am, I'll give them tears.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really transparent as well when you see an actor giving it, and it's good acting, but you're like, I think they're just showcasing their acting. You know.
Yeah. It's like sometimes you can tell when an episode's like, oh, they're submitting this one for the Emmy. Got it.
Yes,
You know?
that's exactly right. You can tell. Yeah.
And given that it's such a pretty big ensemble, are there any characters that you feel that Bruce hasn't had enough moments with that you really want to? He's sort of the bulk of it has been with Bruce and with Joyce. But is there anyone that you have like maybe a little FOMO with?
Well, I'm going to say Joyce, actually. I mean, there isn't a lot that Bruce has done with Wendy yet. There's a little bit. And there's one coming up, I think, where there's the two of us. But I do, I'm just such a fan of Wendy's anyway.
Yeah.
So I think greedily, I want to do more with her. But yeah, it's an interesting, I guess I haven't quite figured out Bruce Bruce's relationship with Joyce yet. I think there's more to explore about what that is because obviously Joyce is really the head honcho. She runs the hospital.
Mm.
It's up to Joyce whether or not Bruce gets certain equipment to use or this. So really, Joyce is number one. But in Bruce's head, nobody's more senior than him. He's such an egomaniac that and I think that dynamic of trying to figure out that, yes, Bruce sort of does have a senior in Joyce and also doesn't want to admit that he's junior to anybody. I think
Right.
there's just more to explore there. I think.
We're gonna go to a segment called From the Fans, where we feature some fan submitted questions.
Cool.
Jubilee asks, if you had a magic wand, what would you change about medicine?
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, what would I change about medicine? I guess could I cure cancer? I mean, I guess we're getting close. Um, oh man, that's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd cure cancer. That feels like a big one we need to get on top of.
Yeah. We have some. I always warn guests about the Reddit usernames because they're very funny often.
Okay.
We have UFO catchers. There's one. Asks,
Excellent.
do you have any personal memories or moments in a hospital that you sort of comes to mind from if you were ever injured or anything like that? Do you have a moment that comes to mind? Any memories?
Yeah, I've been in hospital a bunch. I don't know if anything's too memorable. Yeah. No, it often just involved a lot of vomiting and yeah, and other bodily discharges. I'm afraid. Apologies.
User trying again 1979 asks, were you aware of how much fans missed you after you left Superstore?
Oh, I didn't know that even was a thing. No, look, I loved being in Superstore. I love playing Tate. Um, but would have done more and more on it if I could have. But I think Tate's the kind of character you can't have. You can have rather too much of, right? Because while Tate and Bruce are both very, you could be argued narcissistic, they're really different, I think, in one fundamental way, and that's Tate operates from a place of anger. I think that's kind of his, resentment. He's like, "What am I doing here? My genius is being wasted here in this place." And Bruce is positive. Like Bruce is like, "Yeah, never fear. Bruce is here. And what's the problem? I can solve anything." You know, and so having like a rage-based character is great to pop in from time to time because you can really make fun of that guy, and it's a dynamic that can really throw the cat among the pigeons. But you don't want to see too much of him because it is sort of a negative energy, I think. But I can understand why Bruce is a part of the ensemble because yes, while you roll your eyes at him a lot, I think he's good at his job. I think he means well,
Mm.
and I think he also brings a blindly positive energy to the hospital. But it's very sweet that fans miss Tate. I think I owe Tate a great deal, and my experience on Superstore it's probably largely to do why I got this job on St. Dennis. So I'll always have a special place in my heart for Tate on Superstore.
Yezo asks, are you anything like your character on St. Denis Medical? And they also
Well,
ask, have you improvised a lot, or have you been able to make suggestions about your character?
all right. Well, yeah. Am I? Is there much about Bruce that I'm like? I mean, I think the other cast will say yes, but and I don't know if I want to admit that because there's obviously parts of Bruce that nobody wants to admit they're an egomaniac, and I definitely don't think I am. I am not as confident as Bruce in real life. But yeah, I guess there must be because I think as the show sort of went on in the first few episodes, the writers start writing to your strengths and away from your
Yeah.
weaknesses to every character. So to begin with, you sort of think, well, lots of actors could do this, could do this role. I don't have a singular talent. And there are loads of actors that would have and could have done Bruce, but and I think then the writers would have written to their strengths and away from what it is now. But as I did it, it started to become more like me, and in that way, yeah, I guess there are similarities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do I improvise? Yeah, I mean, the scripts are so good you never have to, but we're always given that opportunity to do it, just in case there's something that comes out. There's always the runtime, of course, to consider, so we can't improvise so much
Yeah.
that we blow the script out. And you have to tell the story in that 22 minutes. But yeah, we're so welcome to make suggestions. I mean, it's in that way, it's such a free set. I never feel like, oh, and sometimes I do improv and it sucks, like it's the worst. No one, it's not funny. But you're never made to feel silly when that happens. It's a set where I feel very free to do and suggest anything. I also feel completely comfortable not doing any of that because the material is just good enough. The jokes are just funny enough. Uh, so yeah, it's there. We typically a button on a scene will be where we'll do the scene and at the very end we'll let it run a little longer and see if any improv comes out of that. But yeah, there's everyone on there is an amazing improviser. Everyone.
And we're going to go to our last segment, our last few minutes here, called It's Time for Life's Big Questions. First one, if you could have any superpower, what would you choose?
Oh, teleportation. Easy. I would
Good
click my
one.
finger. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, this came up in front of Mecky, and he said same thing. He was like, "Yeah, that's the one I would do." Yeah, that's to me the best one. Like if I just want to go, bam. What was it? What was that? Leap or Looper? Leap? No, not Looper. It was that movie with
Is it
uh
Leaper with
Jumper.
Hayden? Jumper.
Hayden.
Yes, with Hayden Christensen. Yeah.
Jumper. Yes, Jumper with Hayden Christensen. Yeah, I was like, when I watched that, I was like, that's the one I want.
Yeah.
Just jump
Just
anywhere in the world and come back again. You're on a lunch break. It's like, bam, I'm in Venice, Italy, having a coffee, and then bam, I'm back at work. That would be the best. Yeah,
yeah.
easy.
If you weren't, if there came a day that you were not working in the arts at all, what would you do?
Wildlife photography.
Oh, cool.
One ready to go. Yeah, my other passion is wildlife. Right? I love traveling to places with lots of biodiversity, rainforest, jungle, safari, deserts, or whatever. And I have a camera with a big long lens, and I just love taking photographs of animals. I just think they're the best. So I always said in another life, and if I retire early, maybe just as a hobbyist, to go around and take photographs of wildlife. I just think it's the best.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What is your favorite way to consume art? Movie going, TV watching, museums, concerts. What's your pick your poison?
Yeah, good one. God, I think these days, I think I'd have to say TV.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love the long form nature of it. I think also documentaries. I'm majorly into documentaries. I think part of that is, when you work in Hollywood long enough, there are paradigms that they kind of adhere to. You can often go, I know what this movie is. I think I know the beats it's going to hit, and I think I know what's going to happen at the end. Hopefully that's changing. We're mixing it up and we're trying new things. But documentaries, I can never do that because life dictates what happened. It's not like it's sticking to a Hollywood script. It's just
Right.
whatever happens, happened. And I think that truth is often stranger than fiction. So I'm hugely into true crime. I
Yeah.
love true crime. It's crazy. I just think it's so much fun to watch and terrifying because it really happened. But yeah, TV, true crime, that's my happy spot, I think.
And last question, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Uh, Make sure you find something else to love as much.
Love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I really do think it's important to find something else in life that you are also passionate about. It just makes your life so much bigger, and it doesn't put all these emotional eggs into one basket, because this industry is abusive, right? It doesn't mean to be, it just is. And and I think a regret that I had was probably being so focused on it for so much of my life that I think I waited too long in my life to discover the rest of the world. And there's so much more that out there to offer. And just love something else as much, if not more. It'll make you a better actor.
Mm,
I promise. Oh,
yeah.
and also another one, talk to old people. Talk to as many old
Yes.
people as you can. You want to know about life? Talk to people who have lived more of it. Love talking to the elderly, because they are amazing instructors of the human condition, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So that's another one.
Awesome, Josh. Thank you so much for taking your time to chat with us today, for delving into your career and chatting about St. Denis. And for everyone listening, St. Denis Medical airs 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC on Tuesdays and streams the next day on Peacock. Thanks for joining us. Actors with Issues is hosted and produced by Juan Ayala. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or on the podcast platform you're listening to. Visit actorswithissues.com for exclusive news and reviews, and give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at Actors With Issues.